his driveway, the weight of his mother-in-law's funeral still heavy on his shoulders. Pamela Graves had been the only family member who'd ever truly accepted him, and now she was gone. Beside him, his wife Erica sat in stony silence, her designer black dress perfectly pressed despite the emotional day. In the back seat, their 12-year-old son Aaron stared out the window, his young face marked by the confusion that comes with experiencing death for the first time. Martin had met Erica 15 years ago when he was fresh out of his Army Ranger training, all muscle and determination, with a Purple Heart from Afghanistan tucked away in a drawer he rarely opened. Back then, Erica Graves had been a small-town beauty with big city dreams, working as a receptionist at a law firm while taking night classes in marketing. She'd been drawn to his quiet intensity, the way he could fix anything with his hands, and the stories he never told about his time overseas. Those early years had been good. Martin had transitioned into private security consulting, using his military contacts to build a successful business protecting high-profile clients. Erica had climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing firm, eventually landing a prestigious position at Meridian Communications. They'd bought the house on Maple Street, had Aaron, and for a while, Martin thought he'd found the peace that had eluded him since his tours in the Middle East. But peace, Martin had learned, was a luxury that required constant vigilance. As they walked up the front steps, Martin noticed Erica's hands trembling as she fumbled with her keys. Strange. Erica never fumbled with anything. She was precision incarnate, every movement calculated and efficient. She'd always prided herself on being unshakable. Even during Pamela's final days when cancer had ravaged the woman who'd raised her alone after her father abandoned them when Erica was 8. "Dad, I'm tired," Aaron said, his voice small in the evening gloom. "I know, buddy. It's been a long day." Martin placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder. Aaron had inherited Martin's steady demeanor, but Erica's sharp intelligence. And Martin had been working to teach him the lessons his own father never had: how to read people, how to trust but verify, how to spot danger before it spotted you. They entered the house, and immediately Martin's instincts prickled. Something was off. The air felt different, charged with an energy that reminded him of those moments before an ambush in Kandahar. Erica had gone rigid beside him, her breathing shallow and quick. "Mom, can I get a snack?" Aaron asked, heading toward the kitchen. "Actually, honey," Erica's voice was strained, "why don't you and Dad come help me in the pantry for a minute? I need to reorganize some things." Martin's eyes narrowed. Erica had never asked for help organizing anything in her life. She was obsessively neat, everything in its place, labeled and categorized. The request made no sense, but before he could question it, she was already pushing them both toward the small pantry off the kitchen. "Mom, it's dark," Aaron protested as Erica shoved them inside and pulled the door nearly closed behind them. "What's wrong so suddenly?" Martin asked, his voice low and controlled. Every muscle in his body had gone taut, ready for action. "Be quiet. Don't say a word." Erica hissed, pressing herself against the door. That's when they heard it, the sound of someone unlocking the front door. Martin's blood turned to ice. Only 3 people had keys to this house: himself, Erica, and Erica's mother, who they'd just buried 6 hours ago. The footsteps that followed were heavy, confident, belonging to someone who felt comfortable in this space. A man's footsteps. Through the crack in the pantry door, Martin watched as Owen Yoder entered their home. He'd seen Owen before at Erica's company events, a tall, lean man with silver-touched temples and an expensive smile. Owen was Meridian Communications creative director, 15 years older than Erica, divorced twice, and known for his aggressive pursuit of both accounts and women. Martin had never liked him, had noticed the way Owen's eyes lingered on Erica during office parties, but he'd trusted his wife. That trust shattered like glass as Owen called out, "Erica, baby, are you here? I saw your car in the driveway." "Baby." The word hit Martin like a sniper's bullet, precise and devastating. "Owen," Erica whispered through the door, her voice breaking with relief and terror. "They're supposed to be at the reception until late. I don't know why they came home early." Martin felt Aaron tense beside him, felt his son's confusion and growing fear. In the darkness of the pantry, surrounded by canned goods and the detritus of domestic life, Martin experienced a moment of perfect clarity. Everything fell into place. Erica's late nights at the office, her sudden interest in weekend conferences, the way she'd grown distant and distracted over the past 6 months. "I'll get rid of them," Owen said, and Martin heard the casual cruelty in his voice, the way he referred to Martin's family as an inconvenience to be disposed of. But Martin Baxter was not a man to be disposed of. He was a decorated veteran who'd survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, who'd built a successful business by being smarter and more ruthless than his competitors. He was a man who'd killed enemies of his country with his bare hands and slept soundly afterward. And now, standing in his own pantry while his wife's lover made himself comfortable in their home, Martin felt something cold and calculating settle into his chest. It was a feeling he knew well, one that had kept him alive in the mountains of Afghanistan and the boardrooms of corporate America. It was the feeling of a predator who'd just identified his prey. As footsteps approached the kitchen, Martin placed his hand over Aaron's mouth and pulled him deeper into the shadows. Whatever was about to happen, whatever revelation was about to unfold, Martin would protect his son from it. And then, when the time was right, he would make everyone who'd betrayed him pay a price they couldn't imagine. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Revelation. "Erica, where are you?" Owen's voice carried through the house with the familiarity of routine. "I brought the contracts from the Morrison account. Thought we could celebrate properly this time." Martin felt his jaw clench as he recognized the code words. There had never been a Morrison account. He'd just heard his wife's affair exposed in the language of corporate euphemism, and the casualness of it made his blood run cold. "I can't," Erica whispered urgently through the pantry door. "Martin and Aaron are here. We just got back from the funeral. So, tell them you have to return to work. Emergency client call. You've done it before." Before. The word confirmed what Martin already knew. This had been going on for months, maybe longer. He thought about all those weekend emergencies, all those late nights Erica claimed were mandatory company meetings. How many times had Owen Yoder been in this house while Martin was traveling for work? Aaron shifted nervously in the darkness, and Martin tightened his protective grip on his son's shoulder. The boy was too young to understand what was happening, but old enough to sense the danger in the air. "Owen, please." Erica's voice was getting desperate. "Just leave. I'll call you later." "After the funeral?" Owen's tone turned mocking. "Come on, Erica. When are you going to finally make the choice? You keep saying you're going to leave him, but you never do." "Leave him?" Martin's hands slowly curled into fists. His wife hadn't just been cheating. She'd been planning to abandon their family entirely. "It's complicated," Erica said. "Martin's not. He's not an easy man to leave. You don't understand what he's capable of. Some small-town security guard? Please. I've been divorced twice, Erica. I know how these things work. You're overthinking it. Small-town security guard." Martin almost smiled at the ignorance. Let Owen Yoder keep underestimating him. It would make what came next so much sweeter. Martin had spent 15 years building a legitimate business, but his client base wasn't just corporate executives who needed bodyguard for public events. Some of his contacts operated in the gray areas between legal and illegal, people who'd worked with him in the military and now ran private military companies, arms dealers, and information brokers. Men who owed him favors and wouldn't ask questions about why he needed them repaid. "You don't know Martin like I do," Erica said, and for the first time, Martin heard genuine fear in her voice. "He's different. The things he did in the army. War stories don't scare me," Owen interrupted. "Besides, what's he going to do? Kill me? This isn't Afghanistan, sweetheart. This is suburban America. There are laws here." The arrogance in Owen's voice was breathtaking. Martin had met men like this before, privileged corporate climbers who thought money and position made them untouchable. They usually learned otherwise, but by then it was too late. "I should check on them," Erica said finally. "Make sure they're not suspicious." "Fine, but I'm not leaving until we finish our conversation. I'm tired of being your secret, Erica. I want what I was promised." What he was promised. Martin filed that phrase away for later analysis. What exactly had Erica promised this man? The pantry door opened, and light spilled in. Erica's face was pale, her carefully applied funeral makeup smudged with stress. She looked directly at Martin, and for a moment, husband and wife stared at each other in perfect understanding. She knew that he knew. "Martin," she said carefully, "I thought I heard something. Are you and Aaron all right?" It was a performance, but not a very good one. Erica's hands were shaking, and her voice had the brittle quality of someone barely holding onto control. "We're fine," Martin said quietly, stepping out of the pantry with Aaron close behind him. "Just looking for some crackers for Aaron. He didn't eat much at the reception." "Dad, who's that man in our living room?" Aaron asked, his young voice cutting through the tension like a blade. From the other room, they heard Owen call out, "Erica, everything okay in there?" "Just my family," Erica called back, her voice falsely bright. "Give me a minute." Martin looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman he'd married had been independent and strong, but she'd also been honest. This person standing before him was a liar and a betrayer, someone who'd violated every promise they'd made to each other. "Aaron," Martin said calmly, "go upstairs and start your homework. I need to talk to your mother about some adult things." "But Dad..." "Now, son." Aaron looked between his parents, sensing the undercurrents but not understanding them. With the wisdom of children, he obeyed without further argument, his footsteps echoing on the stairs. Once they were alone, Martin and Erica faced each other in the kitchen where they'd shared thousands of meals, where they'd made plans for the future, where she'd told him she was pregnant with Aaron 12 years ago. "How long?" Martin asked simply. Erica's composure finally cracked. "Martin, how long, Erica?" "8 months," she whispered. 8 months. Martin did the math quickly. It had started right around the time of Aaron's last soccer season, when Martin had been so proud watching his son play, when he'd thought his family was solid and unshakable. "Are you leaving?" he asked. Erica nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I was going to tell you after the funeral. I didn't want to do it right before Mom died, and then with all the arrangements. How considerate of you." "Martin, please. You have to understand." "I understand perfectly." Martin's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You've been sleeping with your boss for 8 months. You've been planning to destroy our family. You've been lying to our son every single day." He paused, studying her face. "What I don't understand is why Owen Yoder feels comfortable enough in my house to have a key." Erica's silence was answer enough. "Erica." Owen's voice was getting impatient. "We need to talk." Martin looked toward the living room, where a man who'd been violating his home and his marriage was waiting for his wife like he owned them both. Something cold and predatory stirred in Martin's chest, the same feeling he'd had during night raids in Afghanistan when they'd finally cornered high-value targets. "You should go talk to him," Martin said quietly. "Tell him I need to run Aaron to his friend's house for the night. Tell him I'll be gone for at least 2 hours. Erica stared at him in confusion. "What? You want to be with him? Fine. Enjoy your evening. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow." "Martin, I don't understand." You're not angry." Martin smiled, and Erica took an unconscious step backward. She'd seen that smile before, during the early days of their marriage when he'd told her stories about tracking insurgents through mountain villages. It was the smile of a man who'd already won a game his opponent didn't even know they were playing. "Oh, I'm angry," Martin said softly, "but I'm also practical. 15 years of marriage should end properly, don't you think? With all the loose ends tied up nice and neat." As he headed upstairs to get Aaron, Martin was already making mental lists. Owen Yoder had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and Erica had chosen her side. Now it was time for Martin to remind them both why you should never underestimate a man with nothing left to lose and all the skills necessary to take everything away from those who betrayed him. The war was about to begin, and Martin Baxter never lost a war. Chapter 3: The Art of War. The next morning, Martin sat in his home office, surrounded by the tools of his trade. Military commendations hung on the walls beside certificates from various security organizations, but the real weapons in this room were less visible. Encrypted communication devices, multiple passports under different names, and a network of contacts that span from legitimate government agencies to the shadowy world of private contractors. Aaron had spent the night at his friend's house, spared from witnessing his parents' final confrontation. When Martin had returned from dropping him off, he'd found Owen's BMW still in the driveway and the lights on in the master bedroom. He'd stood in his own driveway for exactly 60 seconds, memorizing the license plate number and taking note of the small details that would matter later. The parking pattern, the way Owen had casually draped his jacket over Martin's favorite chair, the sound of laughter coming from upstairs. Then he'd gone to work. The first call had been to Frank Preston, a former Delta Force operator who now ran a specialized investigation firm in Chicago. Frank owed Martin his life from a mission in Afghanistan that officially never happened, and he'd never questioned Martin's request for background checks on business associates and potential threats. Owen Yoder, Martin said into the encrypted phone, creative director at Meridian Communications. I need everything: finances, history, family, weaknesses, dirty secrets. And Frank, this one's personal. How personal? Frank's voice carried the understanding of someone who'd been in similar situations. Total war. I'll have a full report by tonight. The second call was to Ian Carr, a master sergeant who'd served under Martin and now worked in military intelligence. Ian had access to databases that didn't officially exist and could track down information that had been buried by powerful people. Martin. Ian's voice was warm with genuine affection. Been too long, sir. What do you need? Background on Meridian Communications, specifically any government contracts or sensitive client information. And Ian? I need to know if they have any federal oversight, any three-letter agencies keeping an eye on their operations. Corporate espionage angle, something like that. The third call was the most dangerous. Carl Cooley ran a private military company that operated in the spaces between countries, handling problems that governments couldn't solve through official channels. Carl's services came with a price tag that could buy a small country, but he also had resources that could make people disappear or reappear wherever Martin needed them. Carl, it's Martin. I need to cash in some favors. Whatever you need, brother. You saved my ass in Kandahar, and I don't forget debts. I need surveillance, leverage, and insurance. Full package. Domestic operation. There was a pause. Carl's company didn't normally operate on American soil, but exceptions could be made for the right reasons and the right people. Personal. My wife's lover thinks he's going to destroy my family and walk away clean. I'm going to teach him about consequences. Consider done. Send me the details. By noon, Martin had set in motion a machine designed to systematically destroy Owen Yoder's life while keeping his own hands legally clean. It was a strategy he'd perfected during counterinsurgency operations: identify the enemy's weaknesses, cut off their support systems, and then apply pressure until they collapse from within. But first, he needed to have a conversation with his son. Aaron returned from his sleepover around 2 o'clock, his young face bright with the normal concerns of a 12-year-old: homework, video games, and whether his friend Jake would be allowed to come over the following weekend. Martin watched his son dump his overnight bag by the door and head for the kitchen, and felt a surge of protective fury that nearly overwhelmed him. Owen Yoder and Erica had planned to tear this boy's life apart, to shatter his sense of security and family stability for their own selfish desires. They would pay for that, but first, Aaron deserved the truth. Aaron, come sit with me for a minute. His son looked up from making a sandwich, immediately sensing the seriousness in Martin's tone. Am I in trouble, Dad? No, buddy, you're not in trouble, but we need to talk about some grown-up things that are going to affect our family. Aaron sat across from his father at the kitchen table, his eyes wide with the instinctive fear children have when they sense their world is about to change. Your mother and I are getting divorced, Martin said simply. She's been seeing another man, and she's decided she wants to be with him instead of with us. The words hit Aaron like physical blows. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, denial, anger, and finally, a kind of resigned sadness that broke Martin's heart. The man who was here last night? Yes. Is Mom leaving? Yes. Aaron was quiet for a long time, processing information that no child should have to handle. When he finally spoke, His voice was small but steady. "What's going to happen to me?" "You're staying with me," Martin said firmly. "Always. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says or promises, you're my son and you're staying with me. That's not negotiable." "What about Mom? What about her? Don't you love her anymore?" Martin considered the question carefully. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that love isn't just emotion, but also trust, respect, and loyalty? How do you tell your son that his mother had burned down everything that mattered for an affair with a man who viewed their family as an inconvenience? Love isn't enough sometimes, Aaron. When people break important promises, when they choose to hurt the people who trust them, love can't fix that. Are you going to hurt them? The question caught Martin off guard. Aaron was young, but he wasn't naive. He'd grown up listening to carefully edited stories of his father's military service, and he understood that Martin was capable of violence when necessary. "I'm going to make sure they can't hurt us anymore," Martin said carefully. "Sometimes, people need to face consequences for their choices." "Good," Aaron said quietly, and there was something in his voice that reminded Martin of himself at that age, a hardness that came from having to grow up too fast. That evening, after Aaron had gone to bed, Martin's phone buzzed with the first report from Frank Preston. What he read made him smile for the first time in 2 days. Owen Yoder wasn't just an arrogant corporate climber. He was a man with secrets, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities that Martin could exploit. Better yet, he was a man who'd made enemies in all the right places. The game was about to begin, and Martin had just drawn a winning hand. Chapter 4. The First Move. 3 days after the funeral, Martin walked into Meridian Communications carrying a leather briefcase and wearing his best suit. To the receptionist, he looked like any other client consultant coming for a routine meeting. She had no way of knowing that the briefcase contained meticulously gathered intelligence on Owen Yoder and that Martin had spent the previous 48 hours learning everything there was to know about Meridian's corporate structure, client base, and internal politics. Frank Preston's report had been illuminating. Owen Yoder was drowning in debt from his 2 previous divorces, had a gambling problem he thought no one knew about, and was currently embezzling small amounts from client accounts to maintain his lifestyle. More interesting, he'd been sexual harassing junior employees for years, but his position and the company's old boy network had protected him from consequences. Ian Carr's intelligence had been even better. Meridian Communications held several lucrative government contracts, including one with the Department of Defense that required all senior employees to maintain security clearances. Any criminal activity or personal scandal could result in immediate termination and potential federal prosecution. But the crown jewel had come from Carl Cooley's surveillance team. Owen had a cocaine habit, supplied by a dealer named Donnie Pineda, who worked out at a nightclub downtown. Better yet, Owen was planning to propose to Erica at the company Christmas party in 2 weeks, using money stolen from the Morrison account that actually did exist. Martin checked in with the receptionist and was directed to the executive floor. As he walked through the sleek offices filled with ambitious young professionals, he thought about how Erica had described this place as her real home, the place where she felt important and valued. By the time he was finished, she'd never be able to show her face here again. "Mr. Baxter?" A young woman approached him nervously. "I'm Christy Wilkinson, Mr. Yoder's assistant. He's waiting for you in conference room B." Martin followed her down a hallway lined with award plaques and corporate photos. Through the glass walls of conference room B, he could see Owen Yoder sitting at the head of a polished table, his silver hair perfectly styled and his expression confident. The man who'd been sleeping with Martin's wife looked prosperous and untouchable. That was about to change. "Mr. Baxter." Owen stood and extended his hand as Martin entered the room. "Thank you for coming in. I understand you provide security consultation for corporate clients." Martin shook the offered hand and noticed Owen's slight wince at his grip strength. "Among other things," he said mildly, "I understand you're interested in personal protection services?" It was a carefully crafted lie, spread through Martin's contacts in the corporate security world. As far as Owen knew, Martin Baxter was just another vendor looking for business, recommended by a mutual acquaintance who'd vouched for his professionalism. "Actually, it's more of a special situation," Owen said, settling back in his chair with the casual arrogance of a man who thought he held all the cards. I'm getting married soon, and my fiancé has an unstable ex-husband. Military background, potentially dangerous. I need someone who can make sure he doesn't cause problems. The audacity took Martin's breath away. Owen Yoder was sitting across from him, describing him as unstable and dangerous, while asking him to protect against himself. It was beyond arrogance. It was the kind of entitled stupidity that came from never facing real consequences. I see, Martin said calmly. Tell me about this ex-husband. What kind of military background? Army Ranger, supposedly. 3 tours in Afghanistan. The type who probably has PTSD and thinks he's still fighting a war. Owen leaned forward conspiratorially. Between you and me, I think he's the kind of man who could snap at any moment. My fiancée is terrified of him. Martin thought about Erica's words in the pantry. You don't know what he's capable of. She'd been right to be afraid, but for all the wrong reasons. Has he made any specific threats? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. Men like that don't handle rejection well, and when they realize they've lost everything. Owen shrugged eloquently. I want to be prepared. Smart thinking, Martin agreed. What's your timeline? We're planning to announce our engagement at the company Christmas party in 2 weeks. I expect that's when things might get complicated. And this ex-husband, what's his current situation? Job, residence, financial stability? Owen's smile was cruel. He runs some small-time security business. Nothing compared to a real corporation like Meridian. Once my fiancée sees what a real successful man can offer her, I don't think she'll have any trouble leaving him behind. Martin nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the tactical challenges. I'll need some additional information. Photos, addresses, daily routines. The more I know about the potential threat, the better I can protect you. Of course. Owen reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. I had my assistant compile some basic information. Nothing invasive, just what's publicly available. Martin opened the folder and saw his own face staring back at him from what appeared to be a private investigator's report. Owen had been watching him, learning his routines, gathering intelligence for weeks. The violation was complete and systematic. This is very thorough, Martin said, keeping his voice neutral while inside. His fury crystallized into something cold and sharp. I believe in being prepared. Now, about your fee structure. They spent the next 30 minutes discussing rates and services, with Owen describing exactly how he wanted Martin eliminated from his life. He talked about restraining orders, about having Martin arrested on trumped-up charges, about using Meridian's legal team to destroy his business and reputation. All the while, Martin smiled and nodded and took careful notes, documenting every word of what amounted to a conspiracy to commit multiple felonies. Owen Yoder was not just an adulterer and a thief. He was a man planning to use false accusations and legal warfare to destroy an innocent person's life. When the meeting ended, Martin shook Owen's hand again and promised to have a comprehensive security plan ready within the week. As he walked back through the offices of Meridian Communications, he felt the satisfaction of a hunter who'd just watched his prey walk into a perfectly constructed trap. That evening, Martin sat in his office and made another round of calls. The first was to a contact at the IRS who specialized in tax fraud investigations. The second was to a federal prosecutor who owed Martin a favor from a case involving international arms dealers. The third was to a private investigator who worked exclusively for divorce attorneys and had a reputation for finding hidden assets. By midnight, Martin had set in motion a series of events that would systematically destroy Owen Yoder's life, piece by piece, using nothing but the man's own crimes and stupidity against him. It would take time, patience, and careful coordination, but when it was over, Owen would understand the difference between a small-town security guard and a decorated veteran with nothing left to lose. The war had begun, and Owen Yoder had just handed Martin all the ammunition he needed. Chapter 5. Tightening the Noose. 1 week before the Christmas party, Martin received a call that made him smile for the first time since discovering Erica's betrayal. Ted Reyes, the federal prosecutor who'd been investigating financial crimes in the corporate sector, had found something interesting in Meridian Communications books. Your tip about irregularities in client account management was right on target, Ted said. We've identified systematic embezzlement totaling over $200,000. The transactions are sophisticated enough to require senior-level access, and they all trace back to accounts managed by one person. Owen Yoder? Owen Yoder. We're moving on this next week, right after the holidays. Federal marshals will arrest him at his office. Should make quite a scene. Martin thanked Ted and hung up, then immediately called Carl Cooley for an update on the surveillance operation. Your boy Owen has been busy, Carl reported. 3 meetings with the cocaine dealer this week, and he's been liquidating assets. Looks like he's planning something big for that Christmas party. Also, my guys recorded a meeting with a divorce attorney yesterday. He's apparently planning to file papers claiming alienation of affection against you, basically trying to sue you for damages because your wife fell in love with him. The legal term was archaic, rarely used, and almost impossible to prove, but it would tie Martin up in expensive litigation for years while damaging his business reputation. It was exactly the kind of petty, vindictive move Martin expected from a man like Owen. Any word on the harassment allegations? Even better, I had my female operative apply for a junior position at Meridian. Owen couldn't resist making inappropriate comments and suggesting private meetings to discuss her career prospects. We have it all on audio and video. Martin felt the pieces falling into place with satisfying precision. Owen Yoder's arrogance and sense of entitlement were making him sloppy, creating more evidence for Martin to use against him. But the most important call came from an unexpected source. Christy Wilkinson, Owen's assistant, contacted Martin's office directly. Mr. Baxter? Her voice was nervous but determined. I think we need to talk. There are things you should know about what Mr. Yoder is planning. They met at a small cafe downtown, away from Meridian's offices and Owen's network of eyes and ears. Christy was a young woman in her mid-20s, professionally dressed, but with the tired eyes of someone who'd been carrying a heavy burden. I overheard your meeting with Mr. Yoder, she began without preamble. I know what he's planning to do to you, and I can't be part of it anymore. What do you mean? Mr. Yoder has been asking me to do things, document things about your schedule, your clients, your business practices. He wanted me to call in false complaints to the Better Business Bureau to spread rumors about your company providing illegal services. She took a shaky breath. He also wanted me to claim you'd made inappropriate advances toward me, to give him ammunition for a harassment complaint. Martin studied the young woman's face and saw genuine distress and moral conflict. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen what he does to people who get in his way. He destroyed the last 2 women who worked for him when they tried to report his behavior to HR. He has files on everyone at the company, personal information, embarrassing details, anything he can use as leverage. She leaned forward urgently. Mr. Baxter, your wife is making a terrible mistake. Mr. Yoder doesn't love her. He collects women like trophies, and when he gets bored, he throws them away. What about the engagement? Christy's expression turned bitter. He's not planning to marry her. The ring he bought? It's fake. Cubic zirconia in a setting that looks expensive, but cost him less than $500. He's planning to announce their engagement at the Christmas party, let everyone congratulate them, and then find an excuse to call it off after the holidays. The revelation hit Martin like a physical blow. Owen wasn't just stealing his wife. He was planning to humiliate her publicly, to use her for whatever twisted game he was playing, and then discard her when the novelty wore off. There's more, Christy continued. He's been embezzling money from client accounts, but he's structured it so that if anyone investigates, the trail will lead to your wife. He's been using her computer access and forging her digital signature on the transfer authorizations. Martin felt his blood turn to ice. Owen hadn't just been planning to destroy Martin's life. He'd been setting up Erica to take the fall for his own crimes. When the federal investigation came to light, Erica would be the one facing criminal charges while Owen played the role of shock supervisor who'd been betrayed by a trusted employee. Why are you risking yourself to tell me this? Because I have a daughter, Christy said simply. She's 8 years old, and if something happened to me, she'd have no one. Mr. Yoder threatened to have me fired and make sure I never worked in marketing again if I didn't help him. But I can't let him destroy innocent people just to protect myself. Martin reached into his briefcase and pulled out a business card. Christy, I want you to call this number. It's a federal prosecutor named Ted Reyes. Tell him everything you just told me and mention my name. He'll make sure you're protected as a whistleblower. What about my job? When this is over, you won't need that job. I have contacts throughout the security and consulting industry. I'll make sure you land somewhere better, with people who won't ask you to compromise your ethics. As they parted ways, Martin felt a grim satisfaction. Owen Yoder's own cruelty and manipulation had just provided Martin with the final piece of evidence he needed. More importantly, it had given him insight into Owen's ultimate plan, not just to steal Martin's wife, but to destroy her life as well when she was no longer useful. That night, Martin made one more call, this one to Erica herself. "We need to talk," he said when she answered. "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, at the house. Come alone." "Martin, I don't think." "Erica, you're in danger. Real danger. Owen has been setting you up to take the fall for his embezzlement, and there are federal agents who will be arresting someone from Meridian next week. If you want to avoid spending the next 10 years in federal prison, you'll be there." The line went quiet for a long moment. When Erica spoke again, her voice was small and frightened. "What are you talking about?" 9 o'clock, Martin repeated. "Your life depends on it." As he hung up, Martin realized that everything was converging toward the Christmas party. Owen would make his grand gesture with the fake engagement ring, believing he'd won everything. The federal agents would move in shortly afterward, and Martin would be ready to collect the pieces of his shattered family and decide who deserved saving and who deserved to burn. The end game was approaching, and Martin Baxter had never lost an end game in his life. Chapter 6, The Confession. Erica arrived at the house the next morning looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, and her hands shook as she fumbled with her car keys. Martin watched her approach from the window of his office, noting the way she kept checking over her shoulder as if expecting to be followed. Good. Fear would make her more cooperative. He met her at the front door, noting how she flinched when their eyes met. The confident woman who'd been planning to abandon her family had been replaced by someone who was beginning to understand the consequences of her choices. "Thank you for coming," Martin said calmly, leading her into the living room where Owen had stood just a week ago, casually discussing how to destroy Martin's life. "Martin, what you said on the phone about federal agents, what did you mean?" Instead of answering directly, Martin pulled out a thick folder and set it on the coffee table between them. "Before we discuss your future, I want you to understand exactly who you've been sleeping with." He opened the folder to reveal photographs, financial records, and surveillance reports. Owen Yoder, age 47, twice divorced, currently under federal investigation for embezzlement, tax fraud, and money laundering. He's stolen over $200,000 from Meridian's clients over the past 18 months. Erica's face went pale as she stared at the evidence. "That's impossible. Owen would never." He's also been systematically sexually harassing junior employees at Meridian for years. His assistant has recordings of him propositioning her and threatening her job security if she didn't comply. Martin turned the page to reveal transcripts of conversations between Owen and Christy Wilkinson. Erica read them in silence, her expression growing more horrified with each line. Finally, Martin continued, "He's been using your computer access and digital signature to authorize the fraudulent transfers. When the federal agents make their arrests, you're the one whose name is on all the paperwork." "No," Erica whispered. "He wouldn't do that to me. He loves me." Martin pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Owen's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. The beauty of this setup is that everything traces back to her. If anyone investigates, they'll find her digital signature on every transaction. I'll play the shocked supervisor who trusted the wrong employee, maybe even suggest she was having an affair with someone and needed money to fund her new lifestyle. Erica's face crumpled as she heard the man she'd betrayed her family for casually discussing her destruction. When was this recorded? 3 days ago. He was talking to his lawyer about how to minimize his legal exposure when the investigation goes public. Oh God. Erica buried her face in her hands. What have I done? You've destroyed our marriage, planned to abandon our son, and walked into a trap set by a sociopath who views you, as disposable. Martin's voice was clinical, without emotion. The question now is what you're going to do about it. What do you mean? Federal agents will arrest Owen Yoder on Monday morning. When they do, they'll also arrest everyone whose name appears on the fraudulent documents. That includes you, unless we take steps to prove you were manipulated and used. Erica looked up at him with desperate hope. You'd help me? After everything I've done? I'm not helping you, Martin corrected. I'm protecting Aaron. My son doesn't deserve to have his mother go to federal prison because she was stupid enough to trust a con man. The words hit Erica like physical blows, but Martin continued without mercy. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with the federal investigation. You're going to provide them with every communication you've had with Owen, every password he asked for, every document he had you sign. You're going to testify against him if necessary. And if I do this, you'll probably avoid criminal charges. The prosecutor I spoke with is willing to consider you a victim rather than a co-conspirator, provided you cooperate completely. What about Owen? What about him? Martin's voice was flat. He was planning to let you take the fall for his crimes while he moved on to his next victim. Why do you care what happens to him? Erica was quiet for a long time, staring at the evidence spread across the coffee table. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I thought he loved me. I thought we were building something real. He bought you a fake engagement ring, Martin said brutally. Cubic zirconia. He was planning to announce your engagement at the Christmas party and then find an excuse to call it off after the holidays. You were never anything more than entertainment to him. The revelation seemed to break something inside Erica. She began to cry. Not the delicate tears of a woman seeking sympathy, but the harsh, ugly sobs of someone confronting the complete destruction of their self-image. Martin watched without compassion. He'd seen this moment before, in interrogation rooms in Afghanistan when high-value targets finally realized their situation was hopeless. It was the moment when denial cracked and reality flooded in. I need you to understand something, Martin said when her crying subsided. I'm not doing this to save our marriage. Our marriage is over. You made that choice when you brought another man into our home, when you planned to abandon our son, when you chose to believe the lies of a criminal over the truth of the man who'd loved you for 15 years. Martin, please. I'm doing this because Aaron needs at least one parent who isn't in federal prison. You've forfeited any right to his respect or love, but you're still his mother. He deserves better than to have his family completely destroyed by your selfishness. Erica nodded miserably. What do you want me to do? Martin pulled out a legal document. First, you're going to sign this. It's a divorce agreement that gives me full custody of Aaron, the house, and primary control of all marital assets. You'll get enough to start over somewhere far from here, but you'll never have the right to take Aaron away from me. And second, you're going to wear a wire to the Christmas party. The federal agents want to record Owen's confession before they arrest him. You're going to get him to admit what he's done, to brag about how clever he's been. I can't, Erica said in horror. If he finds out, he won't find out unless you tell him. And if you refuse, I'll make sure the prosecutor knows you were uncooperative. You'll face the same charges Owen does, and Aaron will grow up knowing both his parents are criminals. The threat hung in the air between them. Martin felt no satisfaction in breaking down the woman he'd once loved, but she'd made her choices. Now she would live with the consequences, just like everyone else who'd betrayed him. One more thing, Martin said as Erica signed the divorce papers with shaking hands. After this is over, after Owen is arrested and the investigation is complete, you're going to leave. Find a new city, a new job, a new life. Stay away from Aaron and me. For how long? Forever, Martin said simply. You chose Owen Yoder over your family. Now you get to live with that choice for the rest of your life. As Erica left the house for the last time, Martin felt the cold satisfaction of a mission nearing completion. Owen Yoder's trap was closing, and everyone who betrayed Martin was about to learn the price of their treachery. But the Christmas party was still 3 days away, and Martin had one final surprise plan for the man who'd tried to destroy his life. Chapter 7. The Christmas Party. The Meridian Communications Christmas party was held at the grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel, a glittering affair designed to showcase the company's success to clients and competitors alike. Martin arrived fashionably late, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo and carrying himself with the quiet confidence of a man who owned the room before entering it. The security badge clipped to his jacket identified him as a representative of Baxter Security Consulting, officially there to oversee protective services for several high-profile clients attending the event. In reality, he was there to watch Owen Yoder's public humiliation and ensure his own plan reached its perfect conclusion. He found Owen near the bar, surrounded by junior employees and low-level clients, holding court like the corporate prince he believed himself to be. The man looked prosperous and confident in his expensive tuxedo, his silver hair gleaming under the ballroom chandeliers. He had no idea that federal agents were positioned around the hotel's perimeter, waiting for Martin's signal to move in. Erica stood beside Owen, wearing a stunning red dress that Martin had never seen before. She looked beautiful and terrified, the wire hidden beneath her jewelry, transmitting every word to the federal agents monitoring the situation from a surveillance van in the hotel's parking garage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Owen called out, raising his champagne glass for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment, I have a very special announcement to make." The ballroom gradually quieted as guests turned toward the bar. Martin positioned himself where he could see everything while remaining in the shadows, his hand resting casually on the encrypted communication device that would trigger the federal response. 6 months ago, Owen continued, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who thought he'd won everything, "I met an extraordinary woman. Beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, everything a man could want in a partner." He turned to Erica and pulled out a small velvet box. Even from across the room, Martin could see Erica's hands trembling as Owen dropped to one knee in front of 300 guests. "Erica Graves," Owen said loudly, "will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The ballroom erupted in applause as Erica nodded and allowed Owen to slip the fake ring onto her finger. Martin watched his wife's face and saw not joy, but the desperate performance of a woman trapped between federal prosecution and public humiliation. "Tell me about our future together," Erica said, her voice barely audible over the crowd, but clearly picked up by the wire. "Tell me about all the wonderful things we're going to do." It was the signal they'd rehearsed, the prompt to get Owen talking about his plans and, hopefully, his crimes. "Oh, darling," Owen said, pulling her close and speaking directly into her ear where the wire would capture every word. "We're going to have everything. I've been moving money into offshore accounts for months, enough to buy us a house in the Cayman Islands, to travel anywhere we want. Your ex-husband will never find us there. What about your work here? What about it? I've taken everything I need from this place. The connections, the client lists, the money I've been skimming from accounts." Owen's voice was full of arrogant pride. "Let someone else worry about the missing funds. By the time anyone figures out what happened, we'll be long gone." Martin touched his communication device, sending a prearranged signal to the federal agents. Phase 1 was complete. They had Owen's confession on tape. Now came Phase 2. "Owen," Erica said, following the script they'd practiced, "what about Martin? What if he tries to follow us, tries to cause trouble?" Owen's expression turned cruel. "Your ex-husband is about to have much bigger problems than finding us. I've been setting him up for months. False complaints to his business licensing board, rumors about his company providing illegal services to unsavory clients. By the time I'm finished with him, he'll be lucky to get a job as a mall security guard. But what if that's not enough? Then I'll have to get more creative." Owen's voice dropped to a whisper, but the wire picked up every word. "I have contacts who specialize in making troublesome people disappear. Your ex-husband is a trained killer, darling. Men like that have accidents all the time, car crashes, home invasions, training accidents. It would be tragic, really." Martin felt a cold satisfaction as Owen Yoder casually discussed having him murdered. The threat was recorded, witnessed, and would add conspiracy to commit murder to the long list of federal charges Owen would face. But Martin wasn't finished yet. He moved through the crowd toward the makeshift stage where a small band had been playing background music. A quick word with the event coordinator and a $20 tip to the sound technician gave him access to the ballroom's audio system. Ladies and gentlemen, Martin's voice boomed through the speakers, cutting through the celebration like a blade. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a few things to share about tonight's guest of honor. The ballroom fell silent as 300 people turned to stare at the man who just hijacked their Christmas party. Owen's face went white as he recognized Martin, and Erica took an unconscious step backward. My name is Martin Baxter, he continued, his voice calm and professional. Some of you may know me as the owner of Baxter Security Consulting. Others may know me as the husband of the beautiful woman who just got engaged to Owen Yoder. Murmurs swept through the crowd as people began to understand what they were witnessing. I'm here tonight to share some interesting facts about your creative director. For example, did you know that Owen has embezzled over $200,000 from this company's client accounts? The murmurs turned to gasps of shock. Owen tried to move toward the exit, but Martin had positioned himself to block the most direct route. Did you know that he's been sexually harassing junior employees for years, using his position to coerce sexual favors in exchange for job security? Several women in the crowd nodded grimly, confirming what many had suspected but none had dared to report. Did you know that he was planning to frame my wife for his crimes, letting her go to federal prison while he escaped with the stolen money? Owen finally found his voice. This is insane, he shouted. This man is unstable. He's been stalking me, threatening me. Actually, Martin said calmly, you hired me to protect you from myself. Interesting strategy, really. Hire your enemy to find your own weaknesses. The revelation sent a shock through the crowd. Owen's face went through a series of expressions as he realized the full scope of Martin's deception. You see, Martin continued, Mr. Yoder thought he was dealing with a small-town security guard who could be easily manipulated and destroyed. He didn't realize he was dealing with a decorated Army Ranger who spent 3 tours hunting down terrorists and con men in Afghanistan. Martin touched his communication device again, sending the final signal. And now, he said as the ballroom doors burst open and federal agents flooded in, Mr. Yoder is about to learn the difference between a victim and a predator. The next few minutes were chaos. Federal agents surrounded Owen, reading him his rights while guests scattered in panic and confusion. Hotel security tried to restore order while Meridian's executives frantically called their lawyers. Through it all, Martin stood calmly at the microphone, watching as Owen Yoder was led away in handcuffs. The man who'd planned to steal Martin's wife, corrupt his son, destroy his business, and possibly have him killed was finally facing the consequences of his choices. As the crowd thinned and the federal agents completed their work, Martin found himself alone with Erica in the emptying ballroom. She looked destroyed, her beautiful dress wrinkled, and her makeup smeared with tears. It's over, he said simply. What happens now? Now you live with your choices. The federal prosecutor will probably offer you immunity in exchange for your testimony. You'll avoid prison, but your reputation is finished. No marketing firm will ever hire you after this. And Aaron will be fine. He's stronger than you think, and he has me to protect him. Martin, Erica's voice was broken, desperate. Is there any chance, any possibility that we could? No, Martin said firmly. You chose Owen Yoder over our family. You planned to abandon our son. You brought a criminal into our home and gave him access to our lives. There's no coming back from that. As Martin walked away, leaving Erica alone in the ruins of her new life, he felt the satisfaction of a job well done. Owen Yoder would spend the next decade in federal prison. Erica would face the consequences of her betrayal for the rest of her life. And Aaron would grow up knowing that his father was a man who protected those he loved and destroyed those who threatened them. Justice, Martin reflected, was a dish best served with perfect planning and ruthless execution. The war was over, and Martin Baxter had won. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 3 months after the Christmas party, Martin sat in the federal courthouse watching Owen Yoder's sentencing hearing. The man who'd once strutted through Meridian Communications like he owned the world now sat hunched at the defendant's table, wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. The transformation was complete and satisfying. The evidence against Owen had been overwhelming. Beyond the embezzlement and fraud charges, investigators had uncovered a pattern of sexual harassment spanning 7 years and 3 different companies. Women who'd been too afraid to speak out before found their courage when they realized Owen could no longer hurt their careers. Mr. Yoder, the federal judge, said sternly, "You've pleaded guilty to charges of embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and sexual harassment. These crimes show a pattern of predatory behavior that demands significant punishment." Owen's lawyer, a public defender who'd been assigned after Owen's assets were frozen, made a half-hearted plea for leniency. But the judge had seen enough white-collar criminals who thought their positions made them untouchable. "I sentence you to 12 years in federal prison, to be followed by 5 years of supervised probation. You will also pay full restitution to all victims, including Meridian Communications and the individuals you harassed." 12 years. Martin did the math quickly. Owen would be nearly 60 when he got out, too old and marked to ever rebuild the life he destroyed through his own arrogance. As Owen was led away, he caught sight of Martin in the gallery. For a moment, their eyes met, and Martin saw something he'd been waiting 3 months to see: complete understanding. Owen finally knew who Martin Baxter really was and what it cost to threaten his family. After the hearing, Martin met with Ted Reyes in the courthouse cafeteria. The federal prosecutor looked satisfied but tired. The Meridian case had been complex and politically sensitive. Erica's testimony was crucial, Ted said. Without her cooperation, we might not have gotten the harassment charges to stick. What's her status? Immunity agreement holds. She'll never face charges related to the embezzlement, and her testimony put 3 other harassment victims on record. She's actually done some good in the end. Martin nodded. Erica had kept her part of the bargain, testifying against Owen with a thoroughness that surprised everyone. She provided financial records, emails, recorded conversations, and detailed accounts of Owen's manipulation and crimes. Her cooperation had been complete and devastating to Owen's defense. "She's moved to Seattle," Ted continued. "Got a job with a small nonprofit. Completely different field, much lower salary, but it's a fresh start." "Good," Martin said simply. He felt no satisfaction in Erica's reduced circumstances, but no sympathy either. She'd made her choices and now lived with the consequences. At least she was alive and free, which was more than Owen could say. "There's one more thing," Ted said, his expression turning serious. "During the investigation, we uncovered some interesting connections. Owen Yoder had contacts in organized crime, people who specialized in making problems disappear permanently. We think he was seriously considering having you killed." Martin wasn't surprised. Men like Owen, when cornered, often turned to violence as a last resort. It's why Martin had taken precautions, why he'd made sure his son was protected, why he'd moved so quickly to neutralize the threat. Any charges for conspiracy to commit murder? Not enough evidence to prosecute, but enough to know you were in real danger. "You did the right thing, Martin. If you hadn't moved when you did, we might be investigating your murder instead of his embezzlement." As Martin left the courthouse, he reflected on the past 3 months. Aaron had adjusted better than expected to his parents' divorce and his mother's absence. The boy had asked hard questions and received honest answers, and while he'd been hurt by Erica's betrayal, he'd also learned valuable lessons about trust, loyalty, and the consequences of broken promises. Martin's business had actually grown during the scandal. Corporate executives who'd followed the case wanted to hire the man who'd taken down Owen Yoder with such precision and thoroughness. Baxter Security Consulting now had a waiting list of clients who understood that Martin was someone you wanted on your side, not opposing you. But the real victory was more personal. Aaron was thriving in a home where honesty and loyalty were valued above convenience and immediate gratification. He'd seen his father face a crisis with planning, patience, and ruthless determination, and he'd learned that some principles were worth fighting for regardless of the cost. That evening, as Martin helped Aaron with his homework at the kitchen table where everything had started, his son looked up from his math problems with a serious expression. "Dad, do you think Mom misses us?" It was a question Aaron asked periodically, and Martin always answered it the same way. Honestly, I think she regrets her choices, Martin said. But missing us and regretting her actions aren't the same thing. She had a chance to choose her family, and she chose something else. Do you miss her? I miss the woman I thought she was, Martin said carefully. But that woman was partly an illusion. The real Erica made decisions that showed who she really was underneath. Aaron nodded thoughtfully. At 13, he was beginning to understand the complexities of adult relationships and the harsh realities of human nature. Will I see her again? Probably not, Martin said. She agreed to stay away as part of our divorce settlement. She understands that her presence would only hurt you more. Good, Aaron said quietly, echoing his response from months earlier. I don't want to see her. People who break promises don't get second chances. Martin felt a surge of pride at his son's clear moral reasoning. Aaron was growing into exactly the kind of man Martin wanted him to be: strong, principled, and unwilling to compromise his values for temporary comfort. Later that night, after Aaron had gone to bed, Martin stood in his office looking at the commendations and certificates that covered the walls. But his attention was drawn to a new addition. A simple wooden frame containing a photo of himself and Aaron at a baseball game, both of them smiling and enjoying a perfect summer afternoon. It had been taken 2 weeks after the Christmas party, when Aaron was just beginning to understand that his father had protected him from something terrible. The photo captured a moment of pure happiness between a father and son who'd survived a crisis together and emerged stronger. Martin thought about Owen Yoder, probably lying on a narrow bunk in federal prison, wondering how his perfect plan had collapsed so completely. He thought about Erica, alone in Seattle with her nonprofit job and her memories of the life she'd thrown away for a con man's promises. But mostly he thought about the future, about Aaron's upcoming high school years, about the business he was building, about the life they would construct together based on the values that truly mattered. Some people thought revenge was about destruction, but Martin knew better. The best revenge was building something better than what had been destroyed, proving that loyalty and honor would always triumph over betrayal and selfishness. He'd won the war, saved his son, and destroyed his enemies. Now, it was time to build the peace that would justify everything he'd fought to protect. Chapter 9. New Foundations. 2 years after Owen Yoder's sentencing, Martin stood in the backyard of their house on Maple Street, watching 15-year-old Aaron practice with the punching bag Martin had installed after the divorce. The boy had grown tall and lean, inheriting Martin's athletic build along with his quiet intensity. But more importantly, he developed the inner strength that came from understanding the world's harsh realities without becoming cynical about its possibilities. Keep your guard up, Martin called out. And remember, power comes from your legs and core, not just your arms. Aaron adjusted his stance and delivered a perfect combination, his movements fluid and controlled. Martin had been teaching him boxing, wrestling, and basic tactical awareness. Not because he expected Aaron to face the kind of threats Martin had dealt with, but because every man needed to know how to defend himself and those he cared about. Dad, Aaron said, unwrapping his hands as they finished the session, Jake's mom asked if you'd be interested in dating her sister. She's a teacher, apparently. Martin smiled at his son's casual delivery of what was obviously a carefully planned matchmaking attempt. What did you tell her? I told her I'd ask you, but that you're pretty particular about the kind of person you let into our lives. And what kind of person is that? Someone who keeps their promises, Aaron said without hesitation. Someone who wouldn't run away when things get difficult. Someone who understands that family loyalty isn't negotiable. Martin felt a surge of pride at his son's answer. In the 2 years since Erica's betrayal, Aaron had absorbed the lessons Martin tried to teach without becoming bitter or closed off to the possibility of trust. It was a delicate balance, but Aaron was navigating it with wisdom beyond his years. I might be interested in meeting her, Martin said, but there's no rush. We're doing pretty well on our own. And they were. Baxter Security Consulting had become one of the most respected firms in the region, with corporate clients who valued Martin's unique combination of military expertise and strategic thinking. The Meridian case had become legendary in business circles, a cautionary tale about what happened when people underestimated Martin Baxter. More importantly, the business had given Martin the flexibility to be present for Aaron's important moments. He'd never missed a parent-teacher conference, a baseball game, or a school play. After Erica's abandonment, Martin had made sure Aaron understood that he had at least one parent who would always prioritize his well-being above everything else. The house phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Aaron jogged inside to answer it, returning a moment later with a confused expression. "Dad, it's someone named Christy Wilkinson. She says she needs to talk to you about something important." Martin took the phone, wondering what Owen Yoder's former assistant could want after all this time. Christy had landed a good position with a marketing firm in Chicago after testifying against Owen, and Martin had helped her secure the job through his business contacts. "Christy, this is unexpected. How are you?" "I'm well, Mr. Baxter, thanks to you. But I'm calling because something strange has happened, and I thought you should know about it." "What kind of strange?" "I got a call from a private investigator yesterday. He was asking questions about you, about the Meridian case, about what happened to Owen Yoder. He seemed to know a lot of details that weren't public." Martin felt his instincts sharpen. "What kind of questions?" "He wanted to know about your background, your business practices, whether you'd ever done anything illegal or unethical during the investigation. He was fishing for information that could be used against you." "Did he mention who hired him?" "Not directly, but he did ask specifically about whether Owen had any family members who might want justice for what happened to him." Martin's blood chilled. He'd researched Owen's background thoroughly, but he'd focused on the man's criminal activities and professional network. He'd never considered that Owen might have family members who would view his downfall as an injustice rather than appropriate punishment. "Christy, I need you to give me everything. The investigator's name, the company he works for, the exact questions he asked. And I need you to be very careful. If someone is building a case against me, anyone who helped expose Owen could be in danger." After getting the details from Christy, Martin made several calls to his old contacts in intelligence and security. Within hours, he had a complete profile of the private investigator and his client. Owen's older brother, Norman Yoder, was a successful attorney in Philadelphia who'd built his practice defending white-collar criminals. Unlike Owen, Norman was actually competent and connected, with resources and influence that made him a credible threat. He'd apparently spent the past 2 years building a case to prove that Martin had framed his brother, and he was getting close to filing both criminal complaints and civil lawsuits. But Norman Yoder had made the same mistake his brother had made. He'd underestimated Martin Baxter. That evening, Martin sat Aaron down for a serious conversation. The boy listened with the same focused attention he'd inherited from his father, asking intelligent questions and understanding the implications without panic. "So this man thinks you committed crimes to frame his brother?" Aaron asked. "Yes, and he has enough resources to cause us serious problems if we don't handle this correctly." "What are we going to do?" "We're going to remind Mr. Norman Yoder why his brother is in federal prison," Martin said calmly. "And we're going to make sure he understands the consequences of threatening our family." Over the next week, Martin launched a comprehensive investigation into Norman Yoder's law practice, client base, and personal life. What he found was illuminating. Norman had built his reputation defending criminals by using many of the same tactics his brother had employed, including intimidation, evidence tampering, and witness coercion. More importantly, Norman had made enemies throughout the legal establishment. Prosecutors who'd seen their cases destroyed by his unethical tactics, judges who'd been frustrated by his courtroom manipulations, and honest attorneys who'd lost clients to his dirty practices. Martin's approach was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of confronting Norman directly, he began sharing information about Norman's unethical practices with the people who had the power to destroy him professionally. Bar associations received detailed complaints about Norman's conduct. Federal prosecutors learned about his client communications that might constitute conspiracy. The IRS discovered irregularities in his tax filings. Within a month, Norman Yoder was too busy defending himself against ethics charges and federal investigations to worry about pursuing Martin. His law practice crumbled as clients fled and partners distanced themselves from the scandal. His reputation, carefully built over decades, collapsed in a matter of weeks. But Martin wasn't finished. The final move came when Norman, desperate and facing disbarment, made the mistake of trying to threaten Martin directly. He showed up at Aaron's school one afternoon, approaching the boy as he walked to Martin's car. "Aaron Baxter?" Norman's voice was smooth and professional, but Aaron's training kicked in immediately. He'd been taught to recognize potential threats and respond appropriately. "I don't know you," Aaron said calmly, continuing to walk toward his father's car, where Martin was waiting. "I'm Norman Yoder. I think your father has told you about my family." Aaron stopped and turned to face the man who'd just identified himself as a threat to their safety. "Yeah, he told me about your brother. The one who's in federal prison for being a criminal. Your father destroyed my brother's life with lies and manipulation. He needs to face justice for what he did." "Mr. Aaron said with the confidence of a 15-year-old who'd been raised by a warrior, "My father doesn't lie, and he doesn't need to manipulate anyone. Your brother destroyed his own life by being a thief and a predator. If you don't understand that, maybe you're as stupid as he was." Martin had been approaching during the conversation, and he arrived just as Norman's face flushed with anger at being insulted by a teenager. "Mr. Yoder," Martin said calmly, "you're on school property without permission, approaching a minor without parental consent, and making statements that could be construed as threats. I suggest you leave before this situation escalates." "I'm not afraid of you, Baxter." "You should be," Martin replied simply. "Your brother made the mistake of threatening my family, and he's spending the next decade in federal prison. You're about to lose your law license and probably face criminal charges of your own. The question is whether you want to make this worse by continuing to harass my son." Norman looked between Martin and Aaron, seeing the calm confidence that came from knowing you were stronger, smarter, and better prepared than your opponent. It was the same quality that had allowed Martin to destroy Owen so completely, and Norman finally understood what his brother had been up against. "This isn't over," Norman said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, it is," Martin said. "You're going to walk away, focus on trying to save what's left of your career, and never contact my family again. Because if you don't, I'll finish what I started and destroy you as completely as I destroyed your brother." Norman Yoder left the school parking lot and never bothered the Baxter family again. 3 months later, he was disbarred and facing federal charges for evidence tampering in multiple cases. Like his brother, he learned too late that Martin Baxter was not a man to be underestimated or threatened. As Martin and Aaron drove home that afternoon, the boy was quiet for a while before speaking. "Dad, will there always be people trying to hurt us because of what happened with Mom and Owen?" "Maybe," Martin said honestly. "When you stand up to bullies and criminals, sometimes their friends and family don't like it. But that doesn't mean we should let bad people get away with hurting innocent people. So we just keep fighting them." "We keep protecting what matters," Martin corrected. "Fighting is just a tool. The real victory is building a life worth protecting and having the strength to defend it." That evening, as they sat down to dinner at the same kitchen table where everything had started 3 years ago, Martin reflected on how far they'd come. Aaron was growing into exactly the kind of man Martin hoped he'd become: strong, principled, and unafraid to face the world challenges. Their bond had been forged in the crucible of betrayal and tested by threats from multiple enemies, and it had emerged stronger than ever. Erica had chosen betrayal over loyalty, immediate gratification over long-term commitment, and the promises of a con man over the love of her family. She was living with those choices in her small apartment in Seattle, alone with her regrets and her reduced circumstances. Owen Yoder was serving his 12-year sentence in federal prison, probably still wondering how his perfect plan had collapsed so spectacularly. His brother Norman was facing his own legal troubles, learning that threatening Martin Baxter carried a price that few could afford to pay. But Martin and Aaron had something none of their enemies possessed: unshakable loyalty to each other, clear moral principles, and the strength to defend what they valued most. As Aaron finished his homework and headed upstairs to bed, he paused at the kitchen doorway. "Dad, thanks for protecting us. All of us, even Mom, even though she didn't deserve it. Family protects family," Martin said simply, "even when family disappoints us. But there are limits, right? To forgiveness." "Yes," Martin said. "There are lines that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Your mother crossed those lines. But we saved her from the worst consequences of her choices because it was the right thing to do, not because she deserved it. Aaron nodded, understanding the distinction. Some betrayals could be forgiven but never forgotten, and some actions severed relationships permanently. It was a hard lesson for a 15-year-old, but an important one. As Martin turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he felt the deep satisfaction of a man who'd faced the worst betrayal imaginable and emerged victorious. He'd protected his son, destroyed his enemies, and built a life based on the principles that truly mattered. Some people would call his methods extreme, but Martin had learned long ago that half measures were the luxury of people who'd never faced real threats. When someone threatened his family, when they tried to destroy everything he'd built and loved, extreme measures weren't just justified, they were necessary. The war was over, and Martin Baxter had won completely. Now father and son would face the future together, stronger for having survived the worst that betrayal and hatred could throw at them, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the end, loyalty had triumphed over betrayal, strength over weakness, and justice over corruption. It was a victory worth every moment of the long, patient campaign that had brought them to this point. The Baxter family, what remained of it, was unbreakable. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.